everybody from whatever time zone you are joining us from. I'd like to thank you for joining the third edition of Cycling Canada's new webinar series, Cycling Chats, presented by AFEX. My name is Sharleen Hoar, and I will be acting as the moderator for today's webinar discussion centered around mental health in sport. Just a little bit about myself and the guests that will be joining us today. I currently hold the role of lead of mental performance at Canadian Sport Institute Pacific, and I am the co-chair of the Canadian Sport Psychology Association. For the past 10 years, I've had the privilege and pleasure of working as a mental performance consultant with several of Canada's high performance athletes and teams, including Cycling Canada, Cross Country Canada, Field Hockey Canada, Swimming Canada, Rugby Canada, and Triathlon Canada. We have three very accomplished guests with us today. Olympic bronze medalist and two-time world champion Catharine Pendrel, Paralympic gold medalist and 13-time world champion Tristen Chernove, and the head coach of Canada's national mountain biking team, Dan Proulx. Thank you all for joining us and taking time out of your day for today's discussion. As mentioned, today's discussion will focus on mental health, and we will also discuss and explore its effects on cycling performance. As we are talking, you who have joined us as guests, we would encourage you to leave your questions in the chat box. I'm going to be taking some time towards the end of our discussion to address and take any of the questions that you might have. So, to start off, Catharine, Tristen, and Dan, I thought it would be interesting to just hear your definitions of what is mental health. How do you know that you're mentally healthy? And what are your signs and symptoms that suggest to you that you're not as mentally healthy as you might want to be? So I think we'll start with Catharine. Catharine, do you want to give us your definition of mental health?
Sure. For me, I'd say that mental health is when I feel good being me. I guess to put it really simple.
And do you have any signs and symptoms?
Yeah, I'd say if I know that I'm maybe getting into a bad space, if I'm typically a really positive person, and if I start focusing on negatives, then I know that I'm not in a good space. Yeah, so I'll maybe I'll just be more grumpy, agitated, and then I know that maybe there's something I need to look at.
Thank you. Tristen, do you have a definition for yourself?
I don't so much have a definition as I do. I think at this stage I pay a lot more attention to symptoms as they're reflected back to me when I'm not at my mental best. And I think I'm really fortunate that I've got a environment around me where I have that reflection presented back to me at relationships at work and at home. And I notice it first and foremost, I think, when I'm not really well is when my attention span and patience with my children becomes decreased. That's one of the first things I think that starts to happen that is a warning sign for me. And then, I think probably most people can relate to the feeling of everything in your day being very sharp and crisp and kind of bright versus sort of a separation from being in the moment that seems to go along with mental distraction and mental stress and anxiety. So those are the two things that I kind of use as my gauge daily to know where I'm at. Is how I'm treating others that I have close relationship with and how I'm perceiving my in the moment experience of the world. Just if things are a bit dull, I know that I might be over fatigued or overstressed.
Excellent. Thank you, Tristen. How
My
about for
my
you?
thoughts are certainly in line with Tristan and Catherine. I think that a lot of it is related to positive energy and feeling like you're eager and excited about what you're doing and engaged and similar to what Tristan said, I find that if you start to feel, fatigued, tired, a little off your game, you feel disconnected from what you're doing and less enthused, and that's certainly an early warning sign that for me, I probably need a break or a timeout so that I can regain that focus and enthusiasm. And yeah, I think in high performance sport or anything you're pursuing at a high level, you've got to be engaged and um, a little bit fired up about what you're doing to get the maximum out of yourself. And yeah, I think just it's around happiness, positive energy, looking forward, and um, yeah, just being able to think clearly and to handle the little stressors that come along as a part of life, whether it's work or sport or life in general.
Yeah, and maybe just as a quick follow-up to those answers, do you find that, you get the warning bells go off when it's like kind of a day-to-day thing, or does it have to be a bit more chronic in nature before you sort of um, recognize recognize your signs and symptoms that you're not as positive as you want to be? Things feel a bit dull, you're tired, because certainly we have ups and downs throughout our day, but when do we really know that our mental health might need a little bit of attention?
Well, for me, I think it's more of a chronic thing. You don't really.
Anybody can take that.
Yeah. Sorry, I guess I thought you were asking me. I guess I think I notice it as a chronic thing that sort of builds up over time, and yeah, and then when I finally do notice it, it's important to recognize that and to take some time to refocus, recharge, so that I can get back into things.
Great, thank you. Tristan or Catherine?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with Dan that you know that emotions are temporary, but when something keeps you just keep feeling, I guess, stuck day after day, or you're kind of stuck in that negative, not your normal self mood. That's when you're like, okay, something's going on with that. I need to pay more attention to.
Great. So one of the things that we are told in the media and even in the scientific literature, that one of the greatest barriers to us taking care of our mental health is stigma, or the fear that others think less of us because we have mental health challenges. So I'm curious about what makes you comfortable to come and chat about mental health today. What's helping you be comfortable with this topic? We'll start with Tristan this time. Oh, maybe we'll go to Dan.
Frozen?
Tristan might be frozen right at the moment.
Well, for me, I definitely think the conversation around mental health, mental performance has really changed during my career and during my lifetime in sport. And I think that people are realizing its importance and are much more open to speaking about the need to be mentally on your game and healthy, not just physically but mentally. And I think the mental component is the it's the operating system of the computer, and I think that it's important that it's functioning at just as high level as we expect our physical well-being to be at. And yeah, it's an open topic that we certainly discuss more. And at the very highest level of sport, just a tiny little microcosm of high performance, the difference between the very best and the others is actually on the mental side. It's not the physical side, and a lot of it is related to just how they handle the day in and day out of being a high performance athlete. It's actually not like a mental toughness thing during the event. It's a mental health thing and a mental performance thing that takes years to develop, and the people who are best at it are able to
create the best system for themselves to operate at a high level on the daily, not just during peak events.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. How about for you, Catherine? What's making you feel comfortable to have this discussion today?
Yeah, it's a lot of the same things, and just the further I get into my career, the more importance I know that your mental space plays in performance. And like Dan said, it's mental toughness isn't about what happens in a race and just bringing it on the day, but it is all the things that you're doing behind the scenes that get you to the races feeling strong and ready to go. I know as an athlete and as a coach that the part about showing weakness is like, you don't, as an athlete, you don't always want to show weakness. You don't always want to admit to a coach if you're struggling, because you don't want them to see that weakness, or you don't want your competitors to see a weakness in yourself. And I think probably a trait of a lot of athletes is that we like to be in control. So we like to fix the problem first, and then we'll reach out for help now that we've kind of got it under control. I learned after the 2012 Olympics that maybe I wasn't quite as in tune with what my signs of stress were, and that impacted my performance. But I wanted to perform on my own terms and kind of do everything right before I asked for help. But definitely being able to have people in my life that I could have ongoing conversations with whenever I felt those stressors, and how stress can make you more negative or more doubtful. Being more aware of those signs and knowing when to talk about them so that they weren't impacting my performance later on. And that's where I think having a diverse support network is really good, because I know if there's maybe something that's stressing me out about my sport life, maybe I want to talk to somebody that's in sport, or maybe I want to talk to somebody that's outside of sport. So, there's certain conversations that I'd have with my best friend from university, and there's certain conversations I'd have with my husband or my coach, depending on kind of like what it is that's stressing you out. And I think it's important to have, a couple people in your life that you feel that you can trust and reach out to talk about various things.
Excellent. Thank you. And Tristen, we have you back. Hopefully you heard the question, but we're talking about what makes you feel comfortable to talk about mental health.
Oh, yeah, I didn't hear the question, so thanks for repeating. I got bumped off there for a little bit, but I found my way back. And I guess, yeah, I've never felt uncomfortable talking about mental health. It just seems like a natural thing to address to me, because I think I've always been in a surrounding environment where it's been an important part of, I guess, relationships are the most important part of my life. The interactions that I have with other people are where I get most of my joy from. And so, yeah, it's definitely really important for my own happiness that I'm emotionally present for others, and so that I can get that reciprocal happiness from feeling their attention and the moment that I'm over fatigued, over stressed, anxiety, any of those things come in, I'm not able to have those kinds of interactions with people. So yeah, I think a lot of that comes from just being surrounded by great friends and great people that have always made me feel really comfortable to address those things.
So what I'm hearing from all of you is this awareness of sort of that the mental health plays a part of your the way you want to show up in the world, whether it's through performance or through relationships, and that it just is normal. It's something very, the head is attached to the body for a reason, and so it's not just about body health, but it's also about mind health and making sure that that's taken care of when there's signs and symptoms that something is slightly off. So thank you for that. And you've already also partially alluded to my next question, but I just was going to further explore with you the role that your mental health plays for cycling performance. Catherine, you had started by addressing, after the 2012 Olympics, that you recognized that you weren't as aware of your stressors as you might have wanted to be. And that impacted performance and sent you on a journey to seek out a broader support group where you could have conversations with. I'm wondering, is there any other aspects for performance that you've been recognizing?
Yeah, I think mental health is important in probably every training session and every race you go into. I'm not sure if I
just
the question that you're asking.
About competitions or about training and how your mental health affects your performance in those different domains.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that there's a slogan that's happy racers go faster, and I'd say that this is absolutely true. I think if you're feeling good in yourself, you're more confident and you're able to put your best foot forward. Stress or suffering mental health in any way can make you feel more doubtful of yourself, more negative. It's harder to see that you're actually capable of doing what you set out to do. For me, probably racing definitely brings in some fears that you have to cope with, but for myself, I actually find the off season probably the hardest part of the season, and it's because you go from this time during the summer where you're highly focused and you have all these goals, and then you're into the off season, and then you have this loss, like you don't have that really present and immediate goal any longer, and so I always find that there's a little bit of a shuffling in that off season as I'm kind of reorienting to what my purpose is at that.
Yeah, and the pace is really different too. You're used to being stimulated by all sorts of different travel or competitions or individuals that maybe in your downtime you don't also get exposed to. Yeah. How about for you, Tristen? Do you find that your mental health impacts your performance, whether it be in the training environment?
Absolutely, and I actually would say from my experience, I feel, and this may change week to week, but at the present moment, I feel like my mental health affects my training a little bit more than competition, but I mean, indirectly that's affecting performance at competition, but on a day-to-day basis, having that that extra 5 to 10% to put into each training session really requires a level of joy in the training that can be lost quite easily. And getting through training is very different than coming out of a training session feeling like you absolutely smashed it and hit some PBs. And doing that day to day is really what I feel for my performance that it takes to have the confidence in competition to go in there at my best. But on the same token, I would say, and maybe this is a bit of self-protection that forced me to believe this, but I believe that, like, when it comes to competition, on the day, even if things aren't feeling perfect, if you've done all the things you need to in training, the body will take care of the mind. I know it's a bit counter to what we're really trying to strive for. And yes, it feels great to be totally in the moment and mentally and emotionally well on race day. But I haven't always been able to be there, and I've had the results that I need, even when the anxiety is taken over or completely not feeling well, but still just trusting and letting the body do what you've been training and practicing for, and the performance can still come. So yeah, I think that especially in training, because it's, if you lose a month of really high quality training because you've not been able to find that extra percent or two, which really you have to be feeling great and happy to do, then that'll affect performance on the day, maybe more than that mental wellness on the given race day.
That's a really important insight, I think, Tristan, in that, there's some science around, chronically we lose sleep and we don't rest as much as we need to. The brain can't function on a day-to-day basis as much as we would want it. But if we don't sleep the night before a competition, it doesn't seem to impact performance quite the same way as it would a chronic loss of sleep in the training period. So there is lots of good insight in that, where we want to put a lot of our energies, at least from the mental health perspective, is in the daily training environment. Of course, there's increased pressure and stress, and there's risk to our mental health with high levels and high performance competition. But in terms of impacting performance on that moment, it's good to just let the body take care of itself and just do what it knows how to do. Get out of its way.
Yeah, but
Dan,
well,
do you have any insights?
Well, no, I was just going to
sorry,
add to
Tristan,
that.
go ahead.
I'm much more junior in my evolution of mental health performance compared to Catherine. And she was talking about the 2012 games and all she learned and took out of that. And for me, that was just in Rio in 2016. I did not do the preparation or have established the supports that I needed around my mental health. And coming away from that, on paper, it looks like a very successful games for me, but my memories of it aren't great because I didn't enjoy it, because I was a complete wreck, and I probably didn't really sleep properly actually for about 7 days. And when it came to track events being first, which for me create the highest level of anxiety and stress, just because when you're doing a kilo, a half a second could be the difference between first and fourth, and you want everything to be executed perfectly. And I didn't think that I even had the coordination to get out of the start gate without falling over. I was so wrecked. And yeah, the performance came when it needed to, and it worked, but I don't have, I was super unhappy and wasn't, I had those moments of joy when the performance happened and you're on the podium and all of that, but overall the experience was not the great games experience that it could have been. And that's one of my key goals for Tokyo is to, I know that if I learn how to enjoy it, not only will I go away with one of the best, hopefully best experiences and memories of my life, but also will have just that incremental better performance as well.
Excellent. Really well articulated there, Tristan. Thank you. Dan, do you have any insights around the relationship?
Well, I definitely agree with a lot of what Tristan and Catherine said, and we Sharleen will cringe at this, but we always say that the head follows the body. So when you're recovered, you can physically recovered, your brain can handle a lot more and be a lot more, sort of ready to handle the bumps along the way. And I definitely think that in terms of what Tristan and Catherine both alluded to was this bit about I would characterize it as being focused on the process instead of the outcome. And definitely with Olympic level athletes, if they're fortunate, like Catherine's been to multiple games, but this is a pattern we see in athletes in a whole bunch of different sports who are multi-Olympians, and it's usually a pattern of first games is just go in like a kid and race and be happy and joyful, and just works out pretty darn good. And the second one, if you're at the level that some of these folks are, you may have an ambition of a medal and maybe a little bit more focused on outcome. And whether that works out or not, it might lead to good sensations or memories about that, or not so good. But then we see that third games experience where athletes come back and realize that it's exactly what Tristan ended up on. It's the joy, it's the journey. And I had the fortunate opportunity to be close to Catherine at Rio and at London, and I would say that that's one observation I had, is that in Rio she was focused on the journey and taking it all in and enjoying it, and I think that that created a lot of space for her to be able to handle everything that was thrown at her, and it wasn't a straightforward race for her. There's a couple crashes in there, and still managed to get a medal. And I think that was because she had the resilience, the maturity, the just right attitude. And my observation, not being in her shoes, but my observation from the outside was that I think she just had a lot more fun at that games, and was able to raise her game because it was simply more fun. She was a little bit more rested, and was just really taking it all in. And I think that type of attitude really helps because we're often in situations where the pressure is like through the roof, and it tends to be people who can, as everybody else is getting excited, they can stay calm and stay at an optimal level. And I definitely got to see Catherine do that. Sometimes in Rio she was a lot better than me at it. Couple occasions there were some bike changes and stuff, and her attitude was like, "Hey, I got this," and I was a little bit more amped about things. But yeah, I think that mental performance is key, and it's not mental toughness. It's more like it's not mental toughness at the highest level. It's like it is actually mental well-being and being comfortable in your own shoes and being authentic to yourself. And I think that the athletes who can do that perform best.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. So also addressing, I see Greg's got a question in here around tips and tricks, and what kinds of things do you do to manage your mental health and well-being? We'll start with you, Tristen, this time.
Tips and tricks. I guess the first thing that came to mind actually when I saw Greg's question there, and it was less to do with tips and tricks. My thoughts went to I think one of the key things that I think can be missing for some people and isn't currently missing for me, which is what I attribute some of my success to, is that I think that there's something that happens when a person experiences being the best at something, no matter what it is. And it might be completely outside of what we're training for all the time. Maybe, you were the best at something at school, or I think it's finding something that you can absolutely feel like you've completely conquered and championed to an extreme level, and really letting yourself absorb what that feels like. And once that's happened once in any arena, whether it's what you're currently doing or something else, I know for me anyway, it seems to carry over into everything else once you've experienced what it feels like to be at your best. So it's taking the time to really let that in whenever you accomplish something amazing, and then using that as a tool to, when you're doing something new or a new challenge or whatever, just reconnecting with that feeling of having been absolutely the best at something. And even if it seems like an irrelevant thing, it's the the confidence or the knowing what it feels like to conquer that kind of can click in and help in any situation.
So Tristen, what do you do when you experience being at your best? Like, do you write it down in a journal, or do you just recall? Like, how do you remember those times?
Well, I think it is that it's a matter of when I need that feeling and I'm not there, it's recalling the memory. Yeah, I think that's the key.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. And you're right, we are expanding a little bit around, is there anything missing? That's what Greg was asking. If there's anything missing from your toolbox, and what would that be to manage your mental health? Catherine, do you have any kind of techniques and tools that you like to use? We can call them tips and tricks, but
yeah, I guess to answer Greg's question first, I wouldn't say that there's anything consistently missing that would help my mental health. However, I notice that whenever I get into a less motivated spot or just feeling like I'm not, don't have as much direction or not thriving quite as much, it's always going back and kind of reorienting with my purpose, because this is something that I've had the benefit of working with sports psychologists through my career, and knowing that you're not the same athlete or whatever you're doing for your profession, you're not the same from year to year. That's going to change, and your purpose might change with it. And so you need to keep yourself aligned with why you're doing what you're doing. And once you know why you're doing what you're doing, I find that everything else just seems to fall into more place. And I have giving myself that real strong direction really helps everything just flow in the right way. When I'm losing track of that, I do use journaling a lot. When I'm feeling stressed about a race, maybe I'm feeling fearful of coming up short or doubtful of my ability to perform the way I want to be. I journal a lot. If I'm feeling like, oh, you know, I was a better athlete in a different year than I am now, kind of just keeping track of like writing down some of the evidence of what I've done this year that's going to make me as good as I can be. And if I'm not the same athlete that I was 2 years ago, what have I gained in that time? So I'm not the same athlete, but maybe I can be better, and it's just going to come out in a different way. So a lot of the writing that I would do, I guess, is to help me reframe from being in maybe a less optimistic mindset into seeing an opportunity in whatever situation that I have coming up. I've also definitely been busted dancing in the woods around races when I'm just feeling like a lot of like stress energy that I don't know what to do with. I'll often just go out for a walk, and if I'm listening to music, have a good song, and I was like totally oblivious to the world, like dancing in this field in Czech, and then these cyclists go by, and I'm like, oh hi. But just being able to be silly and just kind of get rid of some energy sometimes, you know, whether it's by going for a bike ride or whatever you do for exercise, or just getting out for a walk. Sometimes you just have energy that you don't really know what that energy is directed at, and it just kind of, you just need to let it flow.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Dan, do you have any tips and tricks that you use or that you've seen other athletes use?
Well, coaching is a funny business because you're someone else does the effort, and so you have some of the same emotions and stress that athletes do, except you're not actually on the start line, so you kind of have it all bottled up inside, and you're probably just as nervous and tense, but there's no outlet. So for me, definitely writing is a thing that I do a lot of. Getting out and making sure that I get some exercise, whether it's just a walk or a ride. And you know, on some of the most important races that I've been to, you will find this funny, but in the morning, I have to make sure I get a little spin in or a walk on my own well before the races start. And I even have a list of like almost like psych up videos or songs, and I do the same routine before every race on every morning. And once I roll through that, I feel like I'm ready to go. And yeah, and for my role, it's about kind of trying to keep the activation level low, let other people freak out, and try to stay really even keel. So yeah, those are some of the tools, but I'm constantly learning. And to Greg's question, I wouldn't say there's anything missing. It's just remembering what you already knew and remembering to practice it. And you know, I'd say within our team, mental performance, if you talked 10 years ago, nobody was doing mental performance in the way that we do now. And Catharine was actually one of the first ones to really integrate that, and as a result, we have a lot of our development and younger athletes have really embraced that approach and are working with mental performance coaches and trying to explore the benefits of that. But I think for our team, Catharine was the leader on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just add to that, sorry, I was just going to add that you don't have to be Olympic level to find benefits from working with a sports psychologist. A lot of people handle stress in different ways and feel performance pressure or put way more expectations on themselves. And so it can be really helpful. And I know for myself, until I needed it, I'd pick up a sports psychology book and I'd be like, nah, I don't need this. I couldn't get into it. And then it's not until things kind of go wrong that you're like, okay, like maybe there's something to this. And I found that I had kind of, and until 2012, I had developed a lot of mental performance techniques. I just didn't know that they were techniques. But knowing about arousal, like how to alter your arousal level before an event, whether you need to calm yourself down or amp yourself up sometimes, just knowing that those are techniques helped me refine them and use them more as tools to get even to be able to address things more quickly and to maintain performance, to come back from a disappointing race or to stay on top when I.
One of the things that I'm hearing and what I'm just picking up of and I love is the sense that these are things that enable you to take control of your mental health. Mental health isn't something that happens to you. It's something you can be actively participating in and addressing yourself. And the other thing that I'm hearing from all of you panelists is that it requires a bit of effort and create some habits that you do almost on the daily to just sort of really build the resilience or build the access you have to have a really healthy mind to absorb the stresses that come your way. So thank you for those. I'm wondering, in this time of COVID, or maybe we should just say uncertainty, do you find that there are certain habits or tools that you're using to help you stay, relatively happy and what you would say mentally well? Are there things that you're doing that you would like to share with others? Dan, we'll start with you.
The tough question. I think for me, it's just staying positive. I feel like I have people that I work with that are actually looking to me for some of that motivation on how to stay positive, and I think it's trying to find the silver linings, and there's a lot of good things that have happened in the last 6-8 months, a lot of really positive things, and sometimes you have to search for them a little bit and look for them, but they're there, and the some of the great things we've learned about is just how to stay more connected and to communicate better as a team, and there's some things that we've done that we would have never been able to do had we not had the push of this uncertainty. And I do think that at the start, I think that the uncertainty was pretty anxiety provoking. It was a little intense. And as this has gone on, I think people have just actually in real time become more resilient. They've learned to let go a little bit and to think about controlling the controllables. So I think there's a lot of really positive things, and yeah, I guess I just try to find that every day.
Excellent. Thank you. I agree. I think connectedness is a huge, huge component right now, trying to find ways that feel like we're connected even though we're isolated physically from one another or distanced. Tristen, how's it going for you in this time of uncertainty?
Like Dan said, there's a lot of silver linings really, and I try to focus on those. It is hard because I do know for myself, it became very clear to me a couple of decades ago, really, that human connection is really everything for what I feel the purpose behind what I do, the motivation behind what I do, and so missing a lot of that, presence with being close to other people is really hard. But when it comes to sport, actually, I have been challenged with feeling a fair bit of guilt about how happy I really have been in general, even in this time of global crisis, really. And sometimes I don't feel like it's right that I feel as okay and good about life as I do, but I do. And the reality is, you know, a lot of the para cycling events I do are pretty short, and there aren't a lot of them through a year. But I'm much more naturally inclined as a ultra endurance athlete, actually, which makes it pretty funny that I race really short events as well. But I'm looking at it as sort of as this is like a massive endurance event that suits me much better, and that we've got this prolonged period where every day I'm competing against my international competitors right now, and it's whichever one of us come out of this time of uncertainty having made the most of each day is gonna reap the rewards. And I'm looking at it. I've got 263 days to beat the competition in front of me right now, and that's what's kind of keeping my focus and keeping me striving each day, and really quite happy.
I love how you can change the channel, so to speak, you know, and look at the positives that is coming from this period. How about you, Catherine?
Yeah, I'd say it definitely changed throughout the pandemic. You know, in the beginning it was quite stressful, and then feel pretty relaxed and just kind of have been able to embrace and adapt to the situation. But yeah, definitely some things that have helped. I think when you have uncertainty, you feel a lot better when you can make some things certain, right? You feeling in control of your destiny, of your direction is makes you feel a lot better. So even like particularly when you're really locked down in what you could do, it's just making small wins every day. And whether that's like doing your core workout every morning or your meditation, it's like giving yourself all these small wins, even if you're not going out there and traveling to races or to bigger competitions or able to do what you might normally do. And kind of like Tristen was saying, it's really reframing things. So, okay, this isn't the 2020 I had imagined, but how can this be an opportunity? And so by changing your perspective from, oh, this is something that happened to me, to this is an opportunity that I have to be better, then that puts you back in control. And I find
fantastic. Again, changing the channel, looking for opportunity, not any kind of threat, but just some opportunities that might arise, and challenging yourself to engage in the process, like Dan talked about earlier. I'm just looking in the chat box here, and Kurt has a great question for us all. He asked, what kind of mental health message would you have wished for back in the early days of your career, or maybe even 10 years ago, regarding mental health? Things you could have done or known about. Let's see. Catherine, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I'd say that I'm not sure if it's any one message, because honestly, I find that people can tell you the right thing, but you might not be in the right space to hear it. You might get the perfect advice and it only makes sense to you 2 years later. And I'd say that definitely happened to me with the 2012 Olympics. I did get pulled into that medal focus by, you know, constantly in the media of like saying what you're going out there to do, and being medal focused had never been what had made my success. But I felt like saying just going out there to do my best, it felt really weak, and it didn't feel like something like an Olympian would say. So I guess my biggest advice is just the reminder to trust yourself as an athlete, and what you've done is what gets you to where you are today. So if you have things that work for you, trust that. You don't need to be another athlete. You may see another athlete or another coach that is a certain way, but that doesn't mean that's the best way, and particularly not the best way for you. So stay true to who you are as an athlete, and what makes you perform. And, you know, that probably is advice that Dan gave me, but, you know, it didn't, the thinking about process over outcome and like trusting yourself as an athlete and your process, those are things that you know, but sometimes you need to hear it multiple times and from different voices.
Excellent response. Thank you, Catherine. Dan, how about for you? Would you have wanted a different message or something?
Well, I think the one that jumped to mind is that high performance is actually world-class basics. It's actually hundreds of tiny little skills that are all basic, and the ones who perform best are the ones who can do all those basics, most of those basics correctly on the day. And for me, I think that thought removes a lot of stress about what high performance is. It's very simple. It's about remembering what you know, and I guess the other piece, and this came from an athlete named Mark Tewksbury, is to focus on your strengths. And too often we tend to, especially in high performance sport, focus on weaknesses. But especially when you're in the lead up to an important event or something that you care about, is actually to spend a lot of time focusing on what you're already good at, and to bring those things that you're the best at out. Don't worry about what you're missing. Look at what you have. And I think that's a really powerful thing for anybody that's pursuing excellence, regardless of the skill. You probably do, most things correctly, and there's a lot to be proud of, and just go in focused on those.
Thank you. That's a really similar theme to what Tristen had suggested as one of his tips and tricks, is focusing on his strengths and focusing on when he's done really well. Tristen, is there a message for mental health that you wished you had had?
My audio cut out there for a minute as Dan was wrapping up there. Was that another question directed at me, Sharleen?
Yes, please. Do you want me to repeat it?
I'm not sure. Yes,
Maybe
please.
I'll repeat the question.
My connection seems to be.
Okay, you got it. Okay. The question is there a mental health message you had wanted to receive 10 years ago?
Yes, and I think actually I was reflecting on something Catherine said earlier. She kind of hit it a little bit for me earlier in this discussion, but one of the most beneficial things that I'm trying to adopt more, and wish I had of earlier, is that constant reminder of purpose, who and what I'm in this moment for, which often for me under times of great pressure gets forgotten. And that actually can be one of the key sources for getting me off of my mental wellness game, is these perceived expectations and pressures that as soon as I bring back focus on purpose of who I'm really showing up on that day for, and for what, and really think about who those people are and what those objectives are, then you realize how trivial really most of that pressure and perceived expectation is, because really, the people that that I'm really doing all this for needs to be about me, and at the center of that. And that's something I personally struggle with keeping in sight. Often that drifts away, and when it does, I lose the joy of sport and what I'm doing. So keeping that, and I think for every one of us, that's probably very different. But for me, as my career has gone along, I've become more and more clear on why I'm doing what I'm doing, and what it's really for and about. And so trying to sharpen the key mental messages I can give myself to refocus on that all the time.
Yeah, that sense of purpose.
You said joy. It just triggered a question I often get, and it's from parents, from coaches. Like, what's the secret for young athletes to progress in the sport? What type of training do they need to do, and what's the best way forward? And my advice is always around fun and enjoying the sport. And it sounds crazy that that's the secret to eventually becoming a Tristen or a Catharine. But I can't stress that enough, that especially with young athletes, high school athletes or younger, the ones who have the most fun and enjoy what they're doing are always going to do better than somebody who's on a really serious program but doesn't love it. So just riding and just enjoying the sport is a real key thing. Joy is important, and fun is fast.
Fun is fast. I like that. I know I've been asked to moderate, but I'll just share quickly. One of the things that I do with my 13-year-old daughter is I have her sort of reflect on her day and say, what are 3 things that are going to make today awesome, as a way of finding some purpose for herself. And at the end of the day, what are some things that I felt good about that happened today, or that I felt proud about, or that I'm grateful for. And that's put in place to develop that mental habit to just find joy in whatever it is that I get to do today. I'm just wondering if there's any other final questions from any of our audience members. I don't see anything left in the chat box. Just leave it another 10 seconds here and see if something comes up. Well, to Catharine, Tristen, and Dan, I want to thank you very much for taking the time and to provide us with your insights and experiences. I think this would be a great time for us to close our session today. And so on behalf of Cycling Canada and AFEX, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us as well. For those who are turning in, a recording of this webinar will be available shortly on Cycling Canada's YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.